Hello everyone, welcome to Pronounce It with Elateria. Moving on in our journey of learning English phonetics and phonology, we introduce you today this lesson, which is a continuation of the chapter on English syllables. Today we're looking at ONSET and CODA as promised. We will look at the consonant clusters that we find either in initial position or in final position. How do we classify them? What combinations of consonants can we find in English? So let's get started with our lesson today. So as promised, as mentioned, we're looking at ONSET and CODA. What is ONSET? What is CODA? Please watch the previous lesson about English syllable that is available on the channel. Just search for English syllable and you will see the concepts of ONSET and CODA. So before looking at the ONSET and CODA, let's understand the concept consonant cluster. As we all know, in most languages, it's unusual to find more than one consonant at the beginning of the words. But in English language, it is very common. You can find up to 3 consonants combined at the beginning of a word. Yes, and when we have consonants combined either in the beginning or the end of a word, we call them consonant clusters. So this is an important concept for us to understand this lesson. So consonant clusters is the combination of consonant sounds, final position or initial position. Now, we move on and we look at the consonant clusters that we find in the onset. Onset comes before the center. And in the onset, we call them the initial consonant clusters. And we have 2 groups, and those groups are divided into other small groups. And the first group is the initial 2 consonant cluster. Why initial 2? It's obviously because we find 2 consonant sounds at the beginning of that word. And the first case that we find in this group is where we have a pre-initial consonant and an initial consonant. So in what cases do we find an pre-initial and an initial consonant? If you look carefully on the board, we have this combination where we combine the S sound with P or K or even M or N, F, La, Wa, Ya, or finally Ra. If you combine S with any of the consonants that you can see in this set, we have a case of initial 2 consonant clusters where we find a pre-initial and an initial. And which one is the pre-initial and which one is the initial? Whenever the word starts with the S sound, and then we have any of these consonants listed here, the S sound is always going to be the pre-initial, and the following consonants are going to be called initial consonants. To understand it better, let's look at some examples. We have here spoon and sleep. And we have to remember that to understand this deeply, we have to look at the word's transcription to analyze its sounds. And that's what we did here. We transcribed spoon and sleep. So spoon, sleep. If you pay attention, we have a combination of S and P at the beginning of the word. So we have initial 2 consonant clusters. And what kind of initial 2? The one where we find a pre-initial and an initial. So if we have this combination, the S is going to be the initial and P is going to be initial. If we divide it, let's write it like this. Let's organize it better, separately. So we find here our onset. This is the center. And this is the CODA. So in this onset, we have initial two consonant clusters, where we have a pre-initial and an initial consonant. Okay, pre-initial, initial. Why? Because the first consonant is S, and we have a set here. This is a default. It does not change. So whenever we find any of these combinations listed here, we are before a pre-initial plus initial consonant cluster. The other example is sleep. Sleep. As you can see, we have S and L combined together. So it's another example of a pre-initial plus initial consonant cluster, where we have here the onset, this is the center, and this is our CODA. In this onset, this S is going to be what? Yes, pre-initial, and La is going to be what? The initial consonant cluster. Everything clear? Great. Let's move on to another situation or other case. This case is made up of an initial consonant and a post-initial, where in this case, we have a set of about 15 other consonants, okay, other than those, 15 other consonants combined with La, Wa, Ra, and Ya. So these sounds combined with a set of about 15 consonants that can be ta, they can be fa, they can be pa, and some other consonants, okay, in this set. We are before an initial and post-initial. Let's look at the example here, number 1, which is the word try. Try. So as you see, it is already transcribed. So let's divide the syllable into onset, center, and CODA. This is our onset. This is the center. As you see, we don't have a CODA here. This is a 0 CODA syllable. Now, if we look at the initial consonants, we see that we don't have the S sound that we had in the case 1. So it's not a pre-initial plus initial, but instead initial plus post-initial. What comes? Any consonant that is not La, Wa, Ra, or Ya coming as the first consonant in a word and then combined with one of these. So the one that comes first is the initial consonant or the initial consonant, and the one that comes after it is called the post-initial. These ones are going to be post. And the other ones that do not belong to this group or this set, those ones are going to be called initial consonants. In the case of ta, for example, this is going to be the initial consonant. And ra, as you can see, it is listed here as a post-initial. So this is a post-initial. Easy, right? Now, let's look at another example, which is the word few. Few. It's already transcribed, and if you pay attention, you have fa and ya. As you can see, ya is the second consonant. So the one that precedes ya is is the initial consonant. And ya, of course, is the post initial. As you can see, this is not a big deal. We just have to pay attention and, of course, transcribe the word carefully before carrying out any analysis. And now we find the other type of initial consonant clusters, where instead of 2, we find 3 initial consonants. Yes, that's possible in English language. Finding 3 consonants in initial position, and these can be very tricky for second language learners, but it's just a matter of practicing over and over again until you improve your pronunciation. Now, as I was saying, we have initial 3 consonant clusters. In this cluster, we find a pre-initial, an initial, and then a post-initial consonant, all of them combined together in initial position. Let's look first at the word strong. You see, we have 3 consonants. The same in its transcription, we find 3 consonant sounds. We have we have cha, and we have ra. Now it's time for us to apply everything that we've learned here. What did we say about s coming in initial position? Yes, we've said that when it happens, this one is considered the pre-initial, great, and then what comes after it is considered the initial consonant. And what comes after it is considered what? The post-initial consonant. Easy. And the same happens to stream. Okay? We said that sa in initial position is considered as a pre-initial. And this one is considered as the initial. And ra, of course, is post-initial. Okay, so this is what happens in the onset. So let's now move on to the second part of our lesson, where we'll be looking at the CODA.